My best friend started dating my ex-girlfriend 3 days after she dumped me and claims it just happened naturally, so I exposed their 2-month affair to everyone we know. I'm still shaking as I write this because I just found out that my entire life for the past 2 months has been a complete lie and the two people I trusted most in this world have been betraying me in the worst possible way. My girlfriend of 3 years Maya broke up with me last Friday and my best friend since college Jake started dating her this Monday and they're both acting like this is some kind of beautiful love story that just happened to bloom right after my relationship ended. Let me give you some background because this whole situation is so messed up that I need to explain how we got here. Maya and I started dating our senior year of college and we've been together for 3 years since then. We moved in together about a year ago and I genuinely thought we were heading toward engagement and marriage and building a future together. She's always been really social and outgoing while I'm more of an introvert, but I thought we balanced each other out well and our relationship felt solid and stable. Jake has been my best friend since we were roommates sophomore year of college, so we've known each other for almost 8 years now. He was the best man at my cousin's wedding last year and I was planning to ask him to be my best man when I eventually proposed to Maya. We hang out at least twice a week playing video games or watching sports and he's basically like a brother to me. Jake has always been the type of guy who dates around a lot but never settles down and he's constantly joking about how he's too young to be tied down to one person. The three of us have hung out together countless times over the past 3 years and Jake and Maya have always gotten along really well. Maybe too well now that I think about it, but at the time I just thought it was great that my girlfriend and my best friend were friends too. They have similar senses of humor and they're both really into hiking and outdoor activities that I'm not as interested in, so sometimes they go on group hikes with other friends while I stayed home and caught up on work or just relaxed. About 2 months ago Maya started acting different in ways that I couldn't quite put my finger on, but that made me feel uneasy. She was spending more time on her phone and being secretive about who she was texting, and she started working late more often or making plans with friends that didn't include me. When I asked her about it she said she was just going through a stressful time at work and needed some space to decompress, but she promised that everything was fine between us. Around the same time Jake started acting weird too. He was less available to hang out and when we did get together he seemed distracted and kept checking his phone. A couple times I caught him quickly putting his phone away when I walked into the room, and when I asked who he was texting he'd just say it was work stuff or some girl he was talking to, but he was being really vague about it, which wasn't like him at all. Maya and I started fighting more over stupid little things and she seemed increasingly irritated with me for reasons I couldn't understand. She'd get annoyed if I wanted to stay in and watch a movie instead of going out, and she kept making comments about how I was boring or too comfortable with our routine. She also started picking fights about my friendship with Jake, which was weird because she'd never had a problem with it before. She'd say things like I spent too much time playing games with Jake or that I was more excited to see Jake than I was to see her, and when I told her that was ridiculous she'd get even more upset and say I was dismissing her feelings. Looking back now I realized she was probably feeling guilty about whatever was going on between her and Jake and was trying to make me the bad guy to justify it. Last Friday Maya came home from work and said we needed to talk, and I immediately knew something was wrong because she had this serious expression that I'd never seen before. She sat me down and told me that she'd been doing a lot of thinking about our relationship and that she felt like we'd grown apart and weren't compatible anymore. She said she loved me but wasn't in love with me anymore and that she thought we should break up. I was completely blindsided because even though things had been tense lately I thought we were just going through a rough patch that couples go through sometimes. I asked her if there was someone else and she swore there wasn't and said she just needed to be single for a while and figure out what she wanted in life. She said she'd been feeling suffocated in our relationship and needed space to rediscover who she was as an individual. Maya moved out that weekend and went to stay with her sister while we figured out the logistics of breaking our lease and dividing up our stuff. I was devastated because I really thought we were going to work through whatever problems we were having, and I couldn't understand how she could just throw away 3 years together without even trying counseling or taking a break instead of completely ending things. Jake was actually really supportive during the breakup, which now makes me sick to think about. He came over Saturday night with pizza and beer and let me vent about how confused and hurt I was, and he kept saying things like Maya didn't deserve me and that I was better off without someone who couldn't appreciate what a good guy I was. He stayed until like 2 in the morning just listening to me process everything, and I remember feeling so grateful to have such a loyal friend during the worst time of my life. On Sunday Jake texted me asking how I was holding up and if I wanted to go to the gym or do something to get my mind off things. We went to play basketball and grab lunch, and he kept reassuring me that I was going to be okay and that the right person for me was still out there. I told him how much it meant to me to have his support and how I didn't know what I'd do without him as my friend, and he got this weird look on his face but said he'd always be there for me. Then Monday happened and my entire world exploded. I was scrolling through Instagram during my lunch break when I saw a picture that made my heart stop. It was Maya and Jake at some restaurant holding hands across the table and looking all cozy and romantic, and Jake had posted it with a caption about taking a beautiful woman out for lunch and feeling like the luckiest guy in the world. I literally couldn't breathe for a minute because I thought I had to be seeing things wrong. There was no way my best friend was posting romantic pictures with my ex-girlfriend 3 days after she'd broken up with me. I called Jake immediately and he answered on the first ring with this weird guilty tone in his voice. I asked him what the heck that Instagram post was about, and there was this long pause before he said he needed to tell me something and that he hoped I'd understand. He said that he and Maya had been talking since my breakup and that they'd realized they had feelings for each other and had decided to see where things could go between them. I asked him when exactly they'd been talking since my breakup, and he said they'd gotten coffee on Sunday to talk about how I was doing, and that's when they'd realized there was something between them. I pointed out that his Instagram post was from Monday lunch, which meant they'd gone from coffee on Sunday to holding hands at romantic dinners in less than 24 hours, and asked him if he really expected me to believe that timeline. Jake got defensive and said that sometimes feelings develop quickly when two people have a real connection, and that he and Maya had discovered they were soulmates. He said he knew the timing looked bad, but that love doesn't wait for convenient moments, and that he hoped I could be happy for them since they were both people I cared about. I hung up on him because I was so angry I couldn't form words, and immediately called Maya to demand an explanation. She answered crying and said she'd been meaning to tell me but didn't know how, and that she was sorry about the timing, but that she and Jake had fallen in love and couldn't help their feelings. I asked her how long this had really been going on, and she swore it had just started after our breakup, but I told her I wasn't stupid and that people don't fall in love and start posting couple photos in 3 days. She kept insisting that it was all new, but that sometimes when you meet your person you just know, and that she'd never felt this way about anyone before. That's when I realized she was basically telling me that in 3 days she'd fallen more in love with my best friend than she'd ever been with me during our 3 years together. I asked her if she'd been emotionally cheating on me with Jake, and she got upset and said I was being paranoid and that they'd just been friends until after we broke up. But something about the way she was acting made me think there was more to this story, so I decided to do some investigating. I remembered that Maya had left her laptop at our apartment when she moved out, and that she was usually logged into her social media accounts on it, so I decided to check her Facebook messages to see if I could figure out when this thing with Jake had really started. What I found was so much worse than I'd even imagined. Maya and Jake had been messaging each other constantly for the past 2 months, and it was obvious that they'd been having an emotional affair that had probably turned physical. The messages started out innocent enough, with Jake sending her funny memes and Maya complaining about work stress, but they quickly escalated into flirting and then into declarations of love and discussions about how guilty they felt about betraying me. There were messages from 6 weeks ago where Jake was telling Maya that he'd never felt this way about anyone before and that he thought about her constantly. Maya was responding that she felt the same way, but that they couldn't act on their feelings because it would destroy me and ruin our friendship. They talked about how torn they were between their love for each other and their loyalty to me. But then the messages got more intense, and they started talking about how unfair it was that they'd found their soulmate but couldn't be together because of the situation. Jake wrote these long messages about how he'd never believed in true love until he met Maya, and how he'd been pretending to be happy as a bachelor when what he really wanted was to settle down with the right person, and now he'd found her but couldn't have her. Maya was writing back about how she'd tried to make our relationship work, but that being with me felt wrong now that she knew what real love felt like with Jake. She said she felt guilty every time I kissed her or told her I loved her because her heart belonged to someone else, and she was living a lie by staying with me. The messages from 3 weeks ago showed them making plans to meet up secretly to talk about their situation and figure out what to do. They met at a coffee shop across town where they knew we wouldn't run into anyone we knew, and talked about whether they should confess everything to me or if Maya should break up with me without telling me the real reason to spare my feelings. Jake was arguing that they should tell me the truth because I deserved honesty and because lying would make everything worse in the long run. But Maya was scared that I'd hate them both and that it would destroy my friendship with Jake, so she thought it would be better if she just broke up with me and then waited a few months before they started dating publicly so it wouldn't look suspicious. But then there were messages from 2 weeks ago where they'd apparently met up again and things had gotten physical. Maya wrote to Jake the next day saying that she felt terrible about cheating on me, but that being with him felt so right that she couldn't regret it. Jake wrote back that he'd never experienced anything like what he felt with her and that he was tired of sneaking around and wanted to be able to love her openly. They made plans to meet up several more times over the next 2 weeks, and it was clear from their messages that they were having a full-blown affair while Maya was still living with me and pretending everything was normal. Maya would message Jake from our bed after I'd fallen asleep, telling him how much she missed him and how hard it was to pretend to be happy with me when all she wanted was to be with him. The worst part was reading messages where they talked about me and how guilty they felt about betraying me, but how they couldn't help themselves because their love was too strong. Jake wrote that he'd never meant for this to happen and that he loved me like a brother, but that what he felt for Maya was beyond anything he could control. Maya agreed and said that she cared about me, but that staying with me when she was in love with Jake would be unfair to everyone involved. They finally decided that Maya would break up with me the following Friday and that they'd wait exactly 1 week before making their relationship public so it wouldn't seem too suspicious. They planned out exactly what Maya would say to me about growing apart and needing space, and they even rehearsed how Jake would act supportive and surprised when I told him about the breakup. Reading those messages felt like getting stabbed in the chest over and over again, because I realized that everything about my breakup with Maya had been a performance and that Jake's support afterward had been completely fake. They'd been planning this whole thing for weeks while I was completely oblivious and thinking that both of them cared about me. The messages from this past weekend were the final nail in the coffin because they showed Maya and Jake texting about how well their plan was working and how I bought their story completely. Maya wrote that she felt bad watching me cry, but that she was excited to finally be free to love Jake openly. Jake replied that he felt terrible lying to my face when I thanked him for being such a good friend, but that he couldn't wait to stop sneaking around. They were supposed to wait until this Friday to go public, but apparently they got carried away at lunch on Monday and decided they didn't care about maintaining the charade anymore since I'd seemed to accept the breakup so well. Jake posted that Instagram picture because he was tired of hiding his happiness, and Maya agreed that they'd waited long enough to start living their truth. I spent the rest of Monday taking screenshots of every single incriminating message because I knew they'd probably delete everything once they realized I had access to Maya's laptop. Then I forwarded all the screenshots to myself and started planning how I was going to expose their lies to everyone who'd been buying their innocent love story. Update 1. I confronted Jake and Maya yesterday with all the evidence I'd found, and their reactions were exactly what I expected from two people who'd been caught in a massive lie. I called Jake first and told him I knew the truth about when their relationship really started and that I had proof of their 2-month affair. There was this long silence before he started stammering about how he could explain everything and that it wasn't what it looked like. I told him I'd read every single message between him and Maya, including the ones where they planned out exactly how to deceive me about the breakup and where they talked about meeting up secretly while Maya was still living with me. Jake tried to deny it at first, but when I started reading specific messages back to him word for word, he finally broke down and admitted that things had gotten complicated between him and Maya. He kept saying that they'd never meant for it to happen and that they'd tried to fight their feelings, but that sometimes love is stronger than loyalty and they couldn't help themselves. I told him that was complete garbage because they'd had multiple opportunities to do the right thing and tell me the truth, but instead they'd chosen to lie and sneak around and humiliate me while pretending to care about my feelings. Jake started crying and begging me to understand that he'd been tormented by guilt, but that what he felt for Maya was real love and that he'd never experienced anything like it before. He said he knew he'd betrayed our friendship, but that he hoped someday I could forgive him because losing me as a friend was the hardest part of this whole situation. I told Jake that he'd lost me as a friend the moment he decided to pursue my girlfriend behind my back and that his tears and apologies meant nothing to me now. I said that if he'd really cared about our friendship, he would have either stayed away from Maya or told me about his feelings before acting on them instead of conducting a secret affair for 2 months while watching me get played. Then I called Maya and she immediately started crying when I told her I knew about the affair. She kept saying she was sorry and that she'd never wanted to hurt me, but that she couldn't control who she fell in love with. I asked her how she could look me in the eye every day for 2 months while she was cheating on me with my best friend, and she said it was the hardest thing she'd ever done, but that she was scared of losing both of us if she told the truth. Maya tried to make it sound like they were victims of circumstance who'd been torn between love and loyalty, but I reminded her that they'd made deliberate choices to betray me every single day for 2 months. I told her that if she'd really loved Jake and wanted to be with him, she could have broken up with me honestly instead of making me think I was crazy for noticing that something was wrong in our relationship. She kept apologizing and saying that she wished things could have been different, but that what she and Jake had was special and that they couldn't throw away their chance at happiness. I told her that their happiness was built on lies and betrayal and that they deserved each other since they were both capable of treating someone they claimed to care about like complete garbage. After I hung up with both of them, I decided it was time to let everyone else know what kind of people they really were, since they'd been getting sympathy and support from our mutual friends for their beautiful new romance. I made a group chat with about 15 of our closest friends and sent them all the screenshots of Jake and Maya's messages along with an explanation of how I discovered their 2-month affair. The response was immediate and intense. Everyone was shocked and disgusted that Jake and Maya had been lying to all of us about how their relationship started. Our friend group had been celebrating their new love and talking about how cute it was that they'd found each other after my breakup, and now everyone felt stupid for being manipulated by their fake story. My friend Alex called me immediately after seeing the messages and said he couldn't believe Jake and Maya were capable of something so calculated and cruel. He said that everyone had thought it was weird how quickly they'd gotten together, but that their story about realizing they were soulmates had seemed believable because they'd always gotten along well as friends. Another friend, Sarah, said she'd been suspicious because Maya had seemed way too happy for someone who was supposed to be dealing with the sadness of ending a 3-year relationship. She said that now it made sense why Maya had seemed almost excited about being single instead of heartbroken like you'd expect someone to be after a serious breakup. Jake started getting angry texts from multiple people calling him out for betraying his best friend, and Maya apparently deactivated her social media accounts because she couldn't handle everyone knowing the truth about what they'd done. Several people who'd been commenting supportive things on Jake's Instagram posts about his new relationship went back and deleted their comments after learning about the affair. My friend group has basically divided into 2 camps, with most people supporting me and cutting contact with Jake and Maya, but a few people saying that while what they did was wrong, love is complicated and that everyone makes mistakes. The people defending them are mostly Maya's girlfriends, who are saying that she was obviously unhappy in our relationship and that emotional affairs sometimes happen when people are with the wrong person. But the majority of our friends are disgusted by how calculated and manipulative Jake and Maya were in planning out their deception. Everyone keeps saying that if they'd really been sorry about developing feelings for each other, they would have handled it honestly instead of conducting a secret affair while making me think I was losing my mind. Jake's roommate told me that Jake has been moping around their apartment and complaining that everyone is being too harsh and that he and Maya are being treated like criminals for falling in love. His roommate said that Jake keeps insisting that what he and Maya have is real and special and that people will understand eventually when they see how happy they are together. Maya's sister called me to apologize for Maya's behavior and said that she'd told Maya she was disgusted by what she'd done and that she couldn't support her relationship with Jake knowing how it had started. She said that Maya was acting like she was the victim because people were being mean to her about her new relationship and that she couldn't understand why everyone was so focused on the timeline instead of being happy that she'd found her soulmate. Update 2. It's been 3 weeks since I exposed Jake and Maya's affair, and the fallout has been even more dramatic than I expected. They've both been trying to do damage control and convince people that I'm just a bitter ex who's trying to ruin their happiness, but the evidence speaks for itself and most people aren't buying their victim act. Jake has been telling people that yes, he and Maya developed feelings while she was still with me, but that they never physically cheated and that emotional connections can't be controlled. He's conveniently ignoring all the messages where they explicitly talked about meeting up and being physical and where Maya wrote about feeling guilty for cheating on me. Maya has been spinning an even more ridiculous story where she's claiming that our relationship was already over in her mind months before she officially broke up with me and that her connection with Jake just helped her realize that she needed to end things with me. She's telling people that I'm being vindictive by sharing private messages and that she never meant to hurt me but couldn't help following her heart. What's really bothering me is that they're both trying to make it sound like they were victims of an impossible situation instead of taking responsibility for their choices. They keep talking about how hard it was for them to develop feelings for each other and how much they suffered having to hide their love, but they never acknowledge that they could have handled it honestly instead of conducting a secret affair. The friend group drama has gotten worse because Jake and Maya have been pressuring mutual friends to choose sides and some people are getting tired of the conflict. A few friends have told me that while they don't approve of what Jake and Maya did, they think I should move on and stop trying to punish them for falling in love. But here's what really pushed me over the edge this week. I found out that Jake and Maya have been telling people that I've been stalking and harassing them since the breakup and that they're considering getting a restraining order against me. They're claiming that I've been driving by Maya's sister's house where she's staying and that I've been showing up at places where they're trying to have dates. This is completely false and I have no idea where they're getting this from unless they're just making it up to try to discredit me and make themselves look like the victims. I haven't contacted either of them since our phone confrontations 3 weeks ago and I've been actively avoiding places where I might run into them because I don't want any drama. When I heard about their stalking claims, I decided I needed to protect myself legally, so I went to a lawyer and showed him all the evidence I have, including the screenshots of their affair messages and the timeline of events. He said that their claims of stalking would be very difficult for them to prove, especially since I have evidence that they've been lying about other things and that if they try to file false charges against me I could potentially sue them for defamation. My lawyer also suggested that I document everything in case they escalate their false accusations, and he helped me compile a timeline showing exactly when I discovered their affair and how I've handled the situation. He said that my behavior has been reasonable and that exposing an affair that affected your social circle isn't harassment, it's just telling the truth about what happened. Meanwhile, Jake and Maya's relationship seems to be struggling under all the scrutiny and drama they created. Multiple people have told me that they've been fighting a lot and that Maya has been crying constantly because she can't handle everyone knowing what they did. Apparently their big romantic love isn't quite as perfect when it's not a secret anymore and they have to face the consequences of how it started. Jake's roommate said that Jake has been second-guessing everything and wondering if what they did was worth destroying all his friendships over. He's apparently been drinking a lot and staying out late, and Maya has been accusing him of having second thoughts about their relationship now that the excitement of sneaking around is gone. Maya's coworker told my friend that Maya has been a mess at work and keeps talking about how everyone has turned against her unfairly and how she just wants people to be happy for her new relationship. She's apparently been calling in sick a lot because she can't handle facing people who know the truth about what she did. The ironic thing is that if Jake and Maya had just been honest from the beginning and told me that they developed feelings for each other, most people probably would have been understanding eventually. Yes, it would have been awkward and painful, but people would have respected them for handling it maturely instead of conducting a secret affair and lying to everyone about how their relationship started. Instead, they chose deception and manipulation, and now they're dealing with the consequences of that choice. They burned their credibility with almost everyone we know and destroyed relationships that took years to build, all because they were too selfish and cowardly to handle their situation honestly. I'm actually doing much better than I expected, and I've realized that losing Maya and Jake was probably the best thing that could have happened to me. Maya was right that we weren't compatible, but not for the reasons she thought. I need someone who's honest and loyal and capable of handling difficult situations with integrity, and she clearly wasn't that person. And Jake showed me that he was never really my friend if he was capable of betraying me so completely for his own selfish desires. Update 3. It's been 2 months since everything exploded, and I wanted to give you all a final update because the situation has reached what I think is its natural conclusion, and honestly it's better than I could have hoped for. Jake and Maya's relationship has completely imploded, and the consequences of their choices have finally caught up with them in ways that are both predictable and satisfying. About 3 weeks ago, Jake's roommate told me that Jake and Maya had broken up after a huge fight where Maya accused Jake of not being willing to fight for their relationship against all the social pressure they were facing. Apparently Maya expected Jake to cut off all his friends who disapproved of their relationship, and when he wasn't willing to do that, she decided he wasn't as committed to their love as she was. Jake tried to explain that he'd already lost most of his friends over their affair and that he couldn't afford to lose the few people who were still speaking to him, but Maya saw this as proof that he was ashamed of their relationship and didn't really love her. She told him that if their love was as special as they'd claimed it was, then he should be willing to sacrifice anything for it. The breakup apparently got really ugly, with Maya throwing all of Jake's stuff out of her sister's house and screaming at him that he'd ruined her life for nothing. She told him that she'd destroyed her 3-year relationship with me and lost most of her friends for someone who wasn't even man enough to stand by her when things got difficult. Jake tried to get back together with Maya multiple times, but she started dating someone new within a week of their breakup, which has to be some kind of record even for her. The new guy is apparently someone she met at work who doesn't know anything about the drama with me and Jake, and Maya has been presenting herself as someone who just got out of a long relationship and is looking for something real. What's really satisfying is that Maya's new relationship is following the exact same pattern as her affair with Jake. Her coworker told my friend that Maya has been complaining about her new boyfriend being boring and not adventurous enough, and that she's been getting texts from mysterious numbers that she's secretive about. It seems like Maya is just fundamentally incapable of being faithful or honest in relationships and will always be looking for something better. Jake has been trying to reconnect with our friend group and apologize for what he did, but most people aren't interested in rebuilding those bridges. He's been saying that he realizes now that what he did was wrong and that he lost himself in what he thought was love, but that he's learned from his mistakes and wants to make amends. But here's the thing that really shows Jake's true character. When I heard that he was trying to come back to our friend group, I reached out to a few people to see what his apology actually consisted of, and it turns out he's still not taking full responsibility for what he did. He's been telling people that he got caught up in something bigger than himself and that Maya was the one who pursued him and convinced him to betray our friendship. Jake is apparently telling people that Maya was manipulative and that she made him believe that I was a bad boyfriend who didn't deserve her loyalty, and that she convinced him that what they were doing was justified because I wasn't making her happy. He's trying to paint himself as another victim of Maya's manipulation instead of acknowledging that he made his own choices to betray me. This really shows that Jake hasn't learned anything from this experience and is still trying to avoid taking responsibility for his actions. He's throwing Maya under the bus to try to salvage his reputation, which proves that he was never really in love with her. He was just selfish and wanted what he wanted regardless of who got hurt. Most of our friends see right through Jake's attempts to rehabilitate himself, and they're not buying his story that he was just a poor manipulated victim. Everyone remembers the messages where Jake was writing love poems to Maya and talking about how he'd never felt this way about anyone before, so they know he was a willing and enthusiastic participant in their affair. The few friends who might have been willing to forgive Jake eventually have been turned off by his refusal to take full responsibility and his attempts to blame everything on Maya. People are saying that if he'd come back with genuine accountability and remorse, they might have considered giving him another chance, but his continued dishonesty shows that he hasn't really changed. As for me, I'm doing incredibly well, and I've started dating someone amazing who actually appreciates honesty and loyalty in relationships. Her name is Rachel, and she's a teacher who I met through a hiking group I joined after my breakup with Maya. She knows the whole story about what happened with Maya and Jake, and she's been supportive and understanding about the trust issues I've had to work through. Rachel is everything that Maya pretended to be but actually wasn't. She's honest and direct about her feelings and needs instead of expecting me to read her mind or guess what's wrong. She communicates openly when she's upset about something instead of building resentment and looking for someone else to validate her feelings. And most importantly, she's loyal and would never consider betraying someone she claimed to care about. What I've learned from this whole experience is that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you ends up being the best thing, because it shows you who people really are before you waste more time with them. Maya saved me from marrying someone who was capable of conducting secret affairs, and Jake showed me that he was never really my friend before I trusted him with something truly important. I'm actually grateful now that I overheard Maya's conversation with my mom about wanting to divorce me, because it led me to discover what she was really capable of before I married her and found out the hard way. And I'm grateful that Jake and Maya's betrayal happened when it did, because it freed me to find someone who actually shares my values and wants the same kind of relationship I want. Sometimes people show you exactly who they are, and the best thing you can do is believe them and move on to find people who deserve your trust and loyalty. Maya and Jake deserve each other and the drama they create wherever they go, and I deserve better than both of them.